In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, March 13th. US regulators are stepping in to put to rest fears about a rampant financial fallout from the failure of Silicon Valley Bank by pledging that depositors will have access to their funds starting Monday. And South Korea and the US stage a major annual military exercise on this Monday, just hours after North Korea reportedly test fires two strategic cruise missiles from a submarine in a display of defiance. The country's parliamentary session comes to a close on this Monday, with President Xi Jinping vowing to keep the best interests of China and his people at heart. We start with the US government's intervention to ease market jitters amid the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Relevant officials say depositors will have access to their funds, whether insured or not, starting Monday. My colleague Lee Kyung-eun reports.
All eyes are on what's next following the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Watchers are on high alert for information over the weekend ahead of the market opening on Monday. And on Sunday, the U.S. government announced that all deposits at tech-heavy lender SVB will be available on Monday. Also included in the emergency measure is another failed institution, Signature Bank, a popular funding source for cryptocurrency companies. Plus, in a separate measure to strengthen public confidence in the banking system, the Federal Reserve announced that it would create a new lending facility for the nation's banks. The announcement gives some much-needed relief for SVB customers and beyond. Initially, after California regulators shut down SVB on Friday, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation stepped in. And it announced that insured customers with deposits of up to $250,000 will be able to access their money. But deposits over that amount accounted for 85% of SVB accounts, and the majority were uninsured. The announcement came after President Joe Biden and federal officials spent the weekend scrambling to come up with a measure other than a bailout. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Sunday said a bailout of SVB is not on the table, citing improved resiliency in the U.S. banking system. Yellen's remarks are in line with the White House immediately expressing confidence on Friday.
Our banking system is fundamentally different because of the changes that we put in place in 2008. For example, they have to hold more capital. They undergo stress tests. So we know that we had to build more resilience into our banking system, which allows it to withstand these kinds of shocks.
President Biden said he is firmly committed to holding those responsible for the crisis accountable, and is set to deliver a speech on Monday on ways to strengthen soundness in the banking sector. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
In related news, authorities here in Korea believe the financial fallout from the failure of Silicon Valley Bank will be limited, but they will continue to monitor the situation nonetheless. Our finance correspondent Daejeon has more.
South Korea will closely monitor for any signs of impact on its financial markets caused by the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. During a meeting on Monday, Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said the possibility of higher volatility and uncertainties couldn't be ruled out. However, Chu also said the fallout from SVB's collapse so far seems to have had limited impact on the global financial market, as top officials of the U.S. are responding by announcing protection measures for customers.
The government and related organizations will monitor the market around the clock and, if needed, take countermeasures promptly.
The Bank of Korea also says knock-on effects from SVB are unlikely to expand into a systemic risk for the financial sector. However, the BOK Senior Deputy Governor Lee Seung-hun said in a meeting on Monday that it may affect investor sentiment and lead to higher global financial volatility in the wake of U.S. Consumer Price Index data to be released on Tuesday. He added the government will monitor the domestic interest rate, stock market, and currency rates and take measures to stabilize the market if necessary. An official from the Ministry of SMEs and Startups also said it's closely monitoring the impact of domestic ventures and startup companies. Meanwhile, the National Pension Service, the country's state pension fund operator, held some 100,000 shares of SVB Financial Group as of last year. The value of its stock holding came to some $23.2 million as of the end of 2022. Stock prices plunged to a little over $106 per share last Thursday from $200 late last month. Trading of shares has now been suspended. The NPS said it's reviewing measures to cope with the situation, adding that although it cannot reveal specific information on its investment, it has reduced its shares in SVB since 2021. Lee Daejeon, Arirang News.
Staying with the local economy, Korea's exports fell by over 16% on year during the first 10 days of this month. According to the Korea Customs Service on Monday, exports amounted to $15.8 billion from March 1st to the 10th. Exports to the US and India expanded on year, while those to Korea's largest trading partner, China, retreated by over 35%. So far this year, Korea has racked up a $22.8 billion trade deficit, almost 4 times the amount of deficit recorded during the same period last year. The lackluster performance on the export front has been linked to slowing demand for semiconductors, petroleum products and wireless communication equipment. Also, on the local front, consumers are spending less on clothing and food amid the country's high inflation. Data from Statistics Korea on Monday show the retail sale index dropped by some 5% in January compared to last August. Spending on clothing marked the most notable drop out of all semi-durable goods during the August to January period, with the index plunging more than 7%, while the index for food fell over 9% during the same period. A fire that broke out at Hankook Tire's Daejeon plant has been brought under control. Now, this is according to the Daejeon Fire Headquarters after a 12-hour battle against the blaze that started Sunday night and destroyed some 4,000 tires. No serious casualties have been reported, but 10 factory workers and 1 firefighter were at the hospital for minor injuries. Trains have also resumed normal operations as of 7 a.m. on this Monday morning, following an earlier halt amid safety concerns. In other news now, there have been additional acts of aggression by North Korea early on this Monday morning, just hours before the start of a major military drill by South Korea and the US. Our defense correspondent Kim Hyun-sung has details.
North Korea has fired at least 1 missile from a submarine in the peninsula's East Sea, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff this morning. The South's military are yet to release further details, but according to the North state-run Korea Central News Agency, North Korea at dawn on Sunday fired 2 strategic cruise missiles from its submarine named the 824 Hero Sub, while conducting an underwater drill in the East Sea. The news agency said the drill was supposed to test weapon reliability and the submarine unit's attack form above and underwater. It reported that its mission was a success. The North said the 2 missiles traveled in 1,500-kilometer figure-of-8-shaped flight orbits, taking a little more than 7,560 seconds to directly hit their target. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff are investigating to verify the claims. If confirmed, this would be the first case of North Korea successfully launching a cruise missile from a submarine. It would also mean that the missile could potentially reach as far as the U.S. Army base in Japan's Okinawa. This missile launch comes on the eve of the Allies' largest combined military exercise in 5 years, dubbed the Freedom Shield. Since 2018, large-scale live field training has been scaled back or called off, first to foster diplomacy with North Korea and then to fend off COVID-19 infections. But now it's back, and for 11 days. Marking the longest combined training course for the Allies ever. The drills are supposed to enhance combat readiness and defense posture by conducting extensive field training exercises on the Korean peninsula under the name Warrior Shield. North Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Monday issued a statement that mentions this joint drill and says that it will respond strongly to the U.S. and its followers' quote, hostile scheming. An expert has noted that North Korea's recent missile launch appears to be a clear warning message from North Korea, as it puts the entire Korean peninsula within range. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Pyongyang, meanwhile, has condemned Washington's calling for a UN Security Council meeting on human rights in North Korea. In a statement on Monday, the regime's foreign ministry denounced the move, denying the presence of human rights violations in its country. The ministry described the U.S.'s own action as a despicable human rights abuse, which it added had reached a serious point. Accordingly, it also warned of a firm response to this latest event. The US and Albania are scheduled to co-host an informal UN Security Council meeting on this Friday to address North Korea's human rights abuses. In China, President Xi Jinping brought to a close the country's annual parliamentary session with a pledge to prove his commitment to the people. Our Lee Si-hu has more on this pledge.
The annual session of China's rubber stamp parliament, the National People's Congress, that kicked off on March 5th, came to a close on Monday. The closing ceremony was held at Beijing's Great Hall of the People, beginning at 9 a.m. local time. One major achievement from the session was the endorsement of Xi Jinping's unprecedented third term as China's president. On Friday, Congress unanimously voted to endorse Xi's third term, making him the longest-serving head of the state since its founding in 1949. President Xi delivered a speech at the closing ceremony where he said that the people's trust is the biggest motivation that drives him to march on. Xi said that he will faithfully fulfill his responsibilities bestowed by the Constitution with the nation's needs as his mission and the people's interests as his yardstick. There was also a leadership reshuffle for the central government. Li Qiang, one of Xi's most trusted proteges, was chosen as China's new premier on Saturday. On Monday morning, Li held a press conference to discuss future plans regarding the economy. Other senior appointments include 4 new vice premiers who will work to revive China's economy after 3 years of strict zero-COVID restrictions. The NPC also approved a plan to reform institutions under the State Council, including the formation of a financial regulatory body and National Data Bureau, as well as a revamp of its Science and Technology Ministry. The changes are seen as a further step by Xi to strengthen control over key areas of policy making. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, a tangible rapprochement has been sealed between Saudi Arabia and Iran after years of animosity that fueled broader regional tensions. Our Yunjin has more on this diplomatic breakthrough.
On Sunday, the South Korean government welcomed the good news of Saudi Arabia and Iran resuming diplomatic relations. South Korea's foreign minister said that Seoul hopes this agreement will enhance trust between the two countries and alleviate tensions in the region. An agreement brokered by China was signed on Friday by Saudi Arabian National Security Advisor Musaid bin Mohammed al-Ayban and Iran's top security official Ali Shamkhani. After 4 days of previously undisclosed talks in Beijing, the two Middle Eastern powers agreed to reactivate a 2001 security cooperation accord, as well as another earlier pact on trade, economy, and investment. The two countries have long been at odds, with Saudi Arabia as the leading Sunni Muslim power and Iran the leading Shiite Muslim power. While the two have backed opposite sides in proxy wars throughout history, the recent hostility between the two countries has threatened stability and security in the Gulf and has been fueling conflicts in the region. Friday's deal resumes diplomacy between the two countries. Saudi Arabia had cut ties with Iran in 2016 amid a dispute over Riyadh's execution of a Shiite Muslim cleric, with Iran storming the Saudi embassy in Tehran in retaliation. Then in 2019, Saudi Arabia blamed Iran for missile and drone attacks on its oil facilities, as well as attacks on tankers in Gulf waters, charges which Iran has denied. Analysts say Friday's agreement should de-escalate tensions in the region, which includes affirmation of the two countries' respect for the sovereignty of states and the non-interference in internal affairs, with an agreement to reopen embassies in both countries within 2 months. And for China, their top diplomat Wang Yi highlighted Beijing's role in achieving the successful deal for dialogue and peace, adding that it would continue to play a constructive role in addressing tough global issues. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Back in Korea, K-pop agency HYBE and tech giant Kakao have agreed to amiably end their battle for SM Entertainment. According to HYBE on Sunday, Kakao will hold the right to manage SM Entertainment, while HYBE will collaborate on platform initiatives. HYBE says the truce comes amid the negative impact of their battle on the local stock market. Accordingly, SM's new executive board candidates from HYBE will step down, and Kakao will purchase more shares of SM Entertainment for some $114 a share by March 26th. It's been a week since the start of the new academic year at campuses here, and inflation is bearing down on living costs for college students here in the capital city, with rent prices and dining expenses having risen dramatically. Our Lee Soo-jin was out and about.
From rent to meals, students in South Korea are grappling with high costs. The average rent for a studio apartment near a university in Seoul jumped from $340 a month in 2021 to almost $390 last year at the current exchange rate. The rise in rent is largely driven by increased demand from the complete resumption of in-person classes.
And it was hard to find decent prices with different houses. But now, I think for me, I was really lucky that I could find a house near school.
The surge in rent prices has also been exacerbated by the preference of rents over jeonse.
It only actually exists in Korean housing market. So for jeonse renters, they need to deposit big chunk of money to the homeowners. But as interest rate is skyrocketed from last year, it became more profitable for renters to deposit that big money in the banks instead to deposit that money to house owners. So they prefer to go through monthly rent.
Rent prices of off-campus housing at Ewha Women's University soared 38% between 2019 and 2022. At Yonsei University, it rose 20%, and at Korea University, 16%. Food prices have also gone up. More and more students are trying to save money by eating at university cafeterias like the one behind me. The demand is so high that students have to wait as long as 30 minutes during peak lunch hours.
There are many instances where meals cost more than 10,000 won due to rising cost. But I have campus food, I can eat more healthy. So I come to eat our school's cafeteria more often nowadays.
This self-service cafeteria, where students can choose what to eat and how much, costs around 6,500 won, or $5, and some other places on campus are cheaper still. Students are also opting to order coffee at the school cafe, where a latte costs only around $2, around half the price of a latte from some franchise coffee shops. With more students watching their budgets in this high inflation environment, coffee shops like this one are likely to be busy all semester. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Over in Tokyo, Team Korea's chances of advancing to these quarterfinals of the World Baseball Classic are slim, but fans are keeping their fingers crossed following Sunday's victory. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Behind a masterful performance by South Korean starting pitcher Park Se-eung and two long balls from San Diego Padres infielder Kim Ha-sung, South Korea got their first World Baseball Classic 2023 win by defeating the Czech Republic 7-3 on Sunday. On the same day, Japan defeated Australia 7-1 to remain undefeated in Pool B, with the Aussies now sitting in second place with 2 wins and a loss. Although it won't be easy, South Korea can still technically qualify for the quarterfinals. That is, if the Czech Republic defeats Australia by a huge run difference on Monday, and South Korea defeats China by a large margin later that evening. Australia currently has a run difference of +5 after defeating China and South Korea, but losing to Japan. However, with 2 losses and a win, South Korea has a run difference of -6. This means in order for South Korea to qualify, they would need to beat China by 6 runs, while the Czechs must defeat the Aussies by 6 runs. That's why the 3 runs given up during Sunday's 7-3 win were crucial, as South Korea could have had an easier path going into Monday's game with a run difference of just -3. On paper, Australia is the stronger team compared to the Czech Republic. But in sports, anything can happen, with South Korea now having to rely on both skill and some luck if they want to move on to the next round with Japan. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Saudi Arabia's state-owned oil giant Aramco has announced record profits for the year 2022. $161 billion. That's the amount of profits that Saudi Arabia's Aramco made last year. The earnings mark a 46.5% increase compared to 2021. The profit surge comes on the back of soaring energy prices since the start of the war in Ukraine and an increase in sales volume for the company. It is also the highest ever annual profit by a publicly listed company. But the announcement has drawn criticism from climate activists, concerned over accelerating climate change caused by fossil fuel use. Aramco's earnings follows a trend in large profits pocketed by the energy industry last year, as America's ExxonMobil reported $55.7 billion of profit and Britain's Shell reported $39.9 billion of profit. Turning over to the UK, where the BBC sports programmes this weekend were disrupted amid a row over free speech. Much of the BBC's football coverage on television and radio was taken off air or shortened after a number of sports show hosts, commentators and even players joined a boycott against the British broadcaster. It comes after longtime freelance host of the popular Match of the Day programme, Gary Lineker, was relieved from his presenting role on Friday. This follows a tweet he made earlier in the week criticizing the British government's asylum seeker policy. The BBC has defended its decision to remove Lineker, saying his tweet fell outside its due impartiality guidelines. And finally, after 5 months on board the International Space Station, Crew 5 have returned to Earth. Traveling in the Endurance capsule, the team of 4 made a safe splashdown off Florida's Gulf Coast on Saturday, local time. That team included the first Native American woman to be sent into space, as well as the first Russian cosmonaut in 20 years to travel on an American spacecraft. The crew spent their time on the ISS conducting critical science experiments and technology demonstrations. They had been in space since blasting off on a SpaceX rocket from Cape Canaveral on October 6th last year. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Forget about last week's March record warms. We are back to late winter-like conditions along with the biting winds. While cold wave alerts were even issued across Korea as morning temperatures dropped 8 to 13 degrees Celsius lower than Sunday morning. Meanwhile, high winds in coastal regions will climb in excess of 20 meters per second, with a strong wind advisory issued in those areas. So please take precautions against strong winds. But thanks to the cold wind, most of the dust in the air has been pushed away. It was pretty dusty through the weekend though. Meanwhile, those in the south feel even colder today, with highs dropping about 7 degrees lower than yesterday afternoon, but sunny skies to dominate most of the country all day today. The cold snap eases tomorrow afternoon, with temperatures returning to season norms, while skies remain mostly sunny throughout the week in central parts of the country, with the air getting drier again. That's Korea for you. Here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour. Thank you for watching, and do stay with us for our panel session coming up next.